The previous arc concluded with Kabru expressing his determination to venture deeper into the dungeon, aiming for another confrontation with Laios. Mesern's decision to join Kabru on this quest left the elves in disbelief. In this arc, we accompany Laios and his party on their journey to the Mad Sorcerer's dwelling. Will they uncover the location of the winged lion? Or are they destined to confront Thistle directly? Stay tuned to see how they maneuver through this treacherous mission. Led by the winged lion, Laios and his companions arrived at the abode of the Mad Sorcerer. Marcel, Chilchuk, and Senshi wondered if this was indeed the spot where the lion was held captive and whether the sorcerer was present. Laios found himself at a loss for answers. As Azutsumi was preoccupied, Marcel suggested they hold back and survey the situation to avoid a direct encounter with the sorcerer. Laios felt uncertain about the course of action, yet the lion, or Kinsukei, seemed to urge them toward the dwelling. When Laios consulted his sword for its safety advice, it remained silent. Despite this, he was thankful for its guidance, although he lamented the lack of meaningful communication. Determined, they beckoned Azutsumi and resolved to proceed cautiously, maintaining vigilance. Nearing the house, Chilchuk spotted what appeared to be an avian sentinel in lieu of a canine one. Laios, intent on neutralizing the threat before being discovered, entrusted the task to Chilchuk. Despite his own doubts about his prowess, Chilchuk drew his bow, aimed at the bird's neck, and was elated with his successful shot. Their interest was piqued by the nature of the bird creature, but Laios suggested they investigate on their return journey. Upon reaching the entrance, Laios observed the door was unlocked. Inside, a multitude of broken mirrors met their eyes, presenting an unsettling welcome that Laios remarked could startle anyone. He cautioned the group to be mindful of the scattered shards underfoot. Chilchuk noted the eerie ambience of the place as they encountered a dining hall. Curiosity struck Chilchuk regarding the figures seated around the table. Were they mere dolls? To ascertain this, Laios approached and upon contact realized they were, in fact, living beings. Spotting Yato among them, Laios inquired about his presence, only to be met with silence. Marcel theorized that perhaps Yato's soul had vacated his form, which led them to wonder if the others were afflicted similarly. It became clear why the sorcerer bore the moniker Mad. With that realization, the group hastened their search for the lion. Azutsumi was unsettled by the animated paintings that seemed to watch them, prompting Marcel to advise her to keep her distance. The team was urged to be vigilant of their surroundings as they pressed on, scrutinizing every room they encountered, from the library to the pantry and even the basement. Despite their swift inspection, there was no sign of the lion anywhere. Marcel speculated that the winged lion's captivity might not be as straightforward as they imagined, suggesting it could be ensnared within an object such as a mirror, crystal, book, or scroll. In the midst of their search, Chilchuk was alerted by a noise emanating from the fireplace. After some time, a figure emerged from the fire, and upon closer examination by Laios, he was astonished to recognize the bird they had previously slain outside the house. It was incomprehensible to Laios that the creature could have resurrected from the flames. Laios directed the group to escort Yato and the others to safety while he engaged the creature with his sword. The bird's ability to superheat his blade made it difficult for Laios to engage directly. However, seizing a moment, he launched an attack with full force and successfully cleaved the creature. But the intense heat forced him to release the overheated sword, revealing his scorched hands. Marcel quickly assessed his injuries, ready to offer healing, but Laios insisted they were out of time. The bird then began to combust once more, and from the ashes, a new form arose. Laios realized this creature was the embodiment of regeneration, an undying bird, known as a phoenix, whose heat was so intense they could not come near it. Chilchuk questioned if the phoenix had any vulnerability, but Laios had no answer. As the flames threatened to spread, Marcel advised they withdraw. Laios, having an epiphany upon seeing Yato, made a decisive yet startling action by throwing Yato's body towards the phoenix, uttering an apology for this necessary but grave act. The group was taken aback by his action, and Marcel, in particular, challenged his decision, pointing out that despite Yato's soulless state, he remained Yato. Laios acknowledged this, indicating that the rule they all understood still held true in this realm. This prompted Marcel to deeply consider the implications of the rule Laios referenced. With Yato's body draped over the phoenix, the group observed that the heat had significantly diminished. Laios shed light on the rule governing the dungeon. No monster may inflict harm on the Golden City's denizens. The phoenix's incapacitation under Yato's body seemed to prevent it from reigniting. While the party was eager to resume their quest for the winged lion, Marcel was apprehensive about leaving the phoenix unattended. Laios, however, assured her that the phoenix was indestructible. Senshi offered Laios a comforting pat and a reassuring smile. Laios had deduced that a creature completely consumed by another loses the capacity to regenerate. Bearing Yato, Senshi also hoisted the phoenix, contemplating the best way to handle it, wary that proximity to any flame might resurrect it, presenting a conundrum. Upon examining the severely neglected kitchen, Senshi decided to start by cleansing the grimy silverware and cooking implements, recognizing that any culinary activity was futile amid such disarray. The apparent neglect suggested the kitchen hadn't been attended to in centuries. This observation sparked an inventive thought in Marcel. Marcel reasoned that tidying up was essential for their search for the winged lion, as it involved a meticulous examination of each item in the house to ensure the lion's hiding place wasn't obscured by clutter. Chilchuk expressed reservations, suspecting that the mad sorcerer would be irate if they organized his abode. However, Laios dismissed his concerns, pointing out that they had already provoked the sorcerer considerably. With their strategy in place, the group prepared to begin their task. Senshi contributed to their efforts by crafting a feather duster from the phoenix's feathers. Marcel reflected on Thistle's indifference to the organization of books, which she found maddening. She observed that people generally fell into two categories regarding book organization: by author or by title. Nonetheless, Marcel admitted that there was a certain appeal to books arranged by their physical dimensions. While rearranging the books, Marcel discovered something hidden at the back of the shelf, triggering a memory of Farlin, who had a habit of stacking books on top of one another, often resulting in them toppling over to the other side. While Laios was diligently organizing the rooms, Izutsumi remained idle on the bed. Laios found nothing noteworthy in the bedroom and inquired if Senshi required assistance. Senshi, needing to clean the silverware from the dining table, accepted the offer. However, when Laios lifted the plate, it crumbled to pieces, which led him to ponder over the duration it had been neglected on the table. He contemplated the peculiar fact that the former occupants had no need for food, yet he was curious about the reason. Deciding not to dwell on it, he proceeded with the cleanup. Senshi, meanwhile, knew that distancing himself from the phoenix would cause it to reignite. He skillfully applied seasoning to the phoenix and submerged it in oil, retreating a few steps to maintain a safe temperature. He continued to work from afar, preparing the garnish and sauce. Once ready, he extracted the meat from the oil and liberally applied the sauce, effectively harnessing the phoenix's self-combustion as a culinary technique. Senshi completed the culinary preparation, expressing his astonishment at the cleanliness and order around him. The dish before him was none other than phoenix confit. He remarked that it was his inaugural attempt at cooking with a self-igniting ingredient, which surprisingly simplified temperature control, making the process rather pleasant. Laios admired the dish's appetizing appearance and suggested that they begin eating. Yet, they all felt a disconcerting sense of impropriety dining above the entombed bodies at the table. Marcel questioned the necessity of occupying the same seats as the fallen individuals. Laios explained that maintaining proximity to those people was crucial to prevent the phoenix from reviving. He cautioned that a rekindled phoenix inside their bodies would be disastrous and urged everyone to press clothes against the bodies to avert such a fate. Despite the awkwardness of their situation, Marcel produced an item she retrieved from the library. She presented a book she had found, which Laios recognized by its binding, similar to one the mad sorcerer had possessed. Marcel observed the thick layer of dust on it, suggesting it might not be the same book. She speculated that the winged lion might be entrapped within its pages, considering ancient magic was Thistle's area of expertise. Marcel observed that the item was familiar and insisted on examining it prior to their meal. Thus, she passed it to Laios. She cautioned him against getting food on it, emphasizing that if the book was genuine, it could be pivotal for their quest. Laios acknowledged her concern, commenting that digestion is commonly thought to take about 3 hours. At that moment, the eye on the book's cover blinked open. Senshi urged Laios to eat quickly, fearing the phoenix might reanimate. Laios complied and sampled the dish. While dining, the group unanimously commended Senshi's meal, finding it both flavorful and well-prepared. Following the meal, Laios attempted to open the book but struggled as the pages seemed to be fused together. Marcel speculated that this was likely due to a seal, which explained the book's resistance. She requested the book from Laios to see if she could undo the seal. Upon inspection, Marcel observed a complex weave of spells intertwined within it, but felt confident in her ability to decipher and dismantle it. Her pursuit of ancient magic had always been thwarted by obstructions, as if every approach led to an insurmountable barrier, which had driven her to explore the dungeon. Sweating from the effort and the gravity of the moment, Marcel realized that this book contained the essence of what she had been searching for. With a mix of anticipation and triumph, she acknowledged that she had finally reached a significant milestone in her quest. Marcel wielded her staff, named Ambrosia, and positioned it over the book. She intended to draw the dense mana, which served as the book's seal, into Ambrosia. Her plan was to locate the point where the mana was least concentrated, and then promptly breach the seal. As she succeeded, the book began to levitate and its pages started to turn autonomously. From within its depths, the winged lion made an unexpected appearance, surprising Laios with its greeting. It claimed to have been observing them all along. Marcel and Laios were astounded, particularly because only the head of the winged lion protruded from the book. The lion disclosed that while half of the seal had been broken, the rest remained in Thistle's possession. In its partial state of freedom, there was limited assistance they could provide, but at least dialogue was possible. The lion expressed a desire to discuss certain matters with Laios, and he was aware that the group would have their own questions. However, time was of the essence, as Thistle had noticed the disruption of the seal and was en route to their location, accompanied by Farlin. Marcel was incredulous and felt unprepared for the unfolding events. However, the winged lion urged them to compose themselves, promising to restrain Thistle's power to afford them some time. Their immediate concern was to deal with Farlin. The group pondered the strategy, but Senshi reassured them, pointing out their prior success against the Red Dragon. Chilchuk, seeking clarification, inquired if Senshi was suggesting they decapitate Farlin while she was preoccupied with Laios' leg. Laios interjected, asserting with confidence that Farlin was, without a doubt, famished at the moment. When Marcel questioned his certainty, Laios explained that while Farlin's body was colossal, her head remained proportionate to theirs, making her oral capacity inadequate for such a large frame. He argued that her dental structure and biting strength were subpar compared to carnivores. Moreover, he mentioned that the consumption of raw meat was likely to cause her disgust. Laios concluded that Farlin must spend the majority of her time eating to survive and seemingly does not sleep to save energy, which is atypical of dragons. Summarizing his observations, Laios reiterated that Farlin must indeed be starving, a point which Senshi understood. Laios proposed that they should concoct a meal for Farlin, rich in nutrients and with an enticing scent, something she would consume eagerly. To ensure her drowsiness, they would incorporate some alcohol into the dish, confident that it would send her to slumber promptly after she ate. This would give them the opportunity to act as they saw fit while she was incapacitated. Nevertheless, there were challenges to consider. First, they had to quickly source monsters to use as components for the meal. Second, Laios had an ingredient in mind that could be suitable. Third, he believed that the necessary monsters might be rabbits. Marcel expressed surprise at the possibility of rabbits residing in the depths of the dungeon and questioned the significance of this. Laios then recounted the infamous legend known to all adventurers, the Dungeon Rabbit. According to the story, a band of seasoned adventurers had delved into the dungeon's depths, a place where ordinary monsters would not typically pose a threat to their experience. Yet, their lifeless bodies were discovered beheaded. Upon being revived, they all testified to the same unlikely perpetrator, a rabbit. After that harrowing encounter, they swore off delving into the dungeon ever again. Marcel was horrified, yet the reality of the situation was veiled in uncertainty. The existence of monster rabbits, or another cause behind the adventurer's fate, remained a matter of conjecture. However, Laios had come across rabbit droppings, lending some credence to the tales of formidable rabbits. He passed an item to Marcel, leaving her astounded as she received a gorget. Laios explained that he acquired this piece of armor specifically because it was reputed to offer protection capable of withstanding an encounter with these mythic rabbits. Hence, he suggested that Marcel should wear the gorget, emphasizing the critical point that her survival was necessary for the resurrection of any of them. Marcel pondered if safeguarding her neck alone would suffice. Chilchuck humorously suggested that added protection could be achieved if Marcel draped Yato around her neck, but Laios countered that this would impede her movement and pose additional risks. Chilchuck felt a mix of irritation and resignation when Laios responded with a sensible retort to his offhand comment. Laios sought to know the time remaining until Farland's arrival, to which the winged lion estimated roughly half a day. Laios believed they could accomplish their hunt and cooking within that span. The lion elaborated that, despite restraining Thistle's power, he would be incapable of providing them or their allies with any aid, hence cautioning them against rash actions as their loss would be devastating. Acknowledging this, Laios directed his group to begin rabbit hunting. He suggested they scout for any burrows in the vicinity, likely to be rabbit dens, intending to place nets over these potential openings. While the typical method involved using a dog to rouse the rabbits, Laios halted mid-sentence, prompted by Azutsumi to continue and disclose the entirety of his thoughts. Laios queried Marcel about the possibility of using magic to scare off the rabbits without causing them harm. Abruptly, a loud noise interrupted them. Laios surmised it might be the sound of a rabbit thumping its hind legs on the ground, a common behavior when they feel threatened or as a means to alert others. Pinpointing the noise's origin, he instructed Senshi and Azutsumi to advance with care, while suggesting Marcel and Chilchuck remain at the house. Heeding Marcel's advice to move cautiously, they proceeded. To their relief, a rabbit soon emerged, but it appeared to be a typical, non-threatening one, lacking any distinctive features like claws, fans, or wings that might associate it with the notorious dungeon rabbits. Laios and Senshi set out to gently coax the rabbit from its location. Their efforts caused the rabbit to dart away, fortunately leaving a trail. They pursued the tracks diligently, but over time, the trail became indiscernible. Initially, they believed the rabbit had retreated to its burrow, but it turned out it had actually drawn them further away. Laios remarked on its unexpected cunning. Without warning, the rabbit bounded toward Laios' shoulder, only to twist and leap away instantaneously. Marcel, observing from a distance, noted that the rabbit was merely escaping. Chilchuck commented on Laios' inaction, jokingly likening him to a large, unmoving figure. Senshi turned his attention to Laios, who remained upright yet facing away. Upon closer inspection, Senshi realized that Laios was in distress, gasping and expelling blood. Startled, Senshi glanced back at the rabbit and to his alarm, he observed a multitude of them. Marcel, from afar, inquired about the unfolding situation. Senshi deduced, given their behavior, that they were indeed the feared dungeon rabbits. Marcel attempted to discern the situation, her vision hindered by the distance. She speculated that the rabbit might have merely collided with Laios, yet she pondered if it had struck a vulnerable spot. Eager to investigate closely, she was restrained by Chilchuck, who grimly suggested that if their assailant was indeed a dungeon rabbit, Laios' fate was sealed. Senshi stood by Laios, who now lay on the ground, his next actions unclear. The persistent thumping of the rabbits was still audible to Senshi. From their vantage point, the dungeon rabbits kept watch. One rabbit, in particular, caught Senshi's eye, revealing a blade attached to its hind leg. The shocking realization of the rabbit's weaponry struck Marcel and Chilchuck as they watched Senshi brace for a counterattack. Despite his readiness, Senshi was swiftly struck on the neck by the rabbit's blade, which caused him to collapse. In the ensuing chaos, Izutsumi managed to wound the rabbit with a weapon, drawing its attention. She hissed, signaling her readiness for the confrontation, even as multiple rabbits advanced on her. Marcel, rife with concern for her companions, noted the escalating danger. Chilchuck suggested they retreat to the house for safety, but Marcel was troubled by the sight of the wounded Laios and Senshi, who were still displaying signs of movement. Chilchuck, however, resignedly inferred that these were merely their final, involuntary spasms. They were beyond saving at this point. Marcel was perplexed by the unfolding chaos, and Chilchuck reassured her, suggesting they could resurrect their fallen comrades later. Despite his caution, she hesitated to act. Her attention on the skirmish caused her to overlook that Chilchuck, not far from her, had also been slashed. Confronted suddenly by the rabbits, she was stunned. One rabbit attacked her, but its blade was thwarted by the gorget guarding her neck. The rabbit then spun and bounded away. In response, Marcel unleashed an explosive spell, which knocked her to the ground. The force of the spell was such that she collided with a tree branch. She realized the spell's intensity was unusually high, likely because she had absorbed an excess of mana while releasing the lion seal. This newfound power meant she could potentially eliminate all the rabbits. However, doing so would leave them without the ingredients they needed to prepare a meal for Farlin. Marcel contemplated the various spells at her disposal: healing, water walking, protection, repulsion of monsters, blinding flash, and summoning. The most viable option seemed to be blinding flash, but its effectiveness hinged on proximity to the rabbits. She considered casting a protective spell on herself and charging into the throng of rabbits, yet she hesitated, knowing she might not be swift enough to catch them and risking severe injury or worse. The idea of using summons as decoys crossed her mind, but they lacked the resources. They needed the ingredients for the task at hand, not for creating familiars. As she glanced down, she saw Chilchuck lying motionless. Utilizing her magic, she compelled him to stand, fully aware that employing necromancy to animate the dead was forbidden. But, given their dire circumstances, the law seemed a distant concern. To her relief, her magic animated Chilchuck's body. Encouraged by this success, she resolved to use his animated form to draw near the others. With a heavy heart, she apologized to Chilchuck for using his body in such a manner, knowing it was essential for retrieving the bodies of the fallen and orchestrating their revival. It was up to her to navigate through this peril and ensure the survival of her companions. As Chilchuck's reanimated body approached the rabbits, Marcel unleashed a blinding light to distract them, shutting her eyes to shield herself from the brilliance. Upon reopening them, she saw Chilchuck standing unscathed while the rabbits were strewn on the ground, incapacitated. Marcel felt a surge of relief that her plan had succeeded. Though some rabbits had escaped, she was now faced with deciding how to deal with the ones that were stunned but would soon recover. Remembering Laios' counsel on handling the rabbits, she knew she had to act swiftly to ensure they wouldn't awaken. With little time to deliberate, she moved to use Senshi's and the rabbits' bodies to her advantage. She directed the motionless Senshi and the rabbits, now under her magical command, to follow her. She then turned her attention to Laios, advancing towards him, but their progress was interrupted by more rabbits. She maneuvered Senshi to evade their attacks. When a rabbit targeted her, she dodged, and to her surprise, both Senshi and Chilchuk mimicked her movements, following her lead in the dangerous ballet. Utilizing the blinding light spell once more, Marcel successfully retrieved Laios. With only Izutsumi remaining to be found, she and the animated corpses searched the area, calling out for her. They spotted a trail of blood leading up a tree where Izutsumi was perched, gripping a rabbit in her mouth. Marcel beckoned her to descend, promising immediate healing for her injuries. She was perplexed by Izutsumi's hesitation to climb down. From Izutsumi's perspective, the sight of several stunned dungeon rabbits accompanying Marcel was paralyzing. This shock caused her to slip, but she managed to cling to the branch. Realizing she couldn't rescue Izutsumi by herself, Marcel instructed the reanimated Laios to assist. Thankfully, Laios caught Izutsumi just in time, preventing a fall. Izutsumi, however, was horrified upon seeing the condition of Laios's body. Marcel turned, questioning whether Izutsumi had succumbed to death, possibly from the shock of a heart attack. At that moment, another rustling heralded the approach of an additional rabbit. Marcel swiftly responded with an attack. As she saw Laios's body starting to topple, she gestured to steady him, but then realized that Senshi was entangled in a tree. Amid the chaos, Marcel finally ushered the group into the mad sorcerer's house, focusing on maintaining the status quo as they moved. They were greeted by the winged lion, who offered a warm reception as Senshi, Chilchuk, the rabbits, and Laios, bearing Izutsumi, each passed through the entrance. Once inside the dining hall, the gravity of their ordeal hit Marcel, and she couldn't restrain her tears. The lion confessed that he had witnessed their plight from afar, expressing that the events had chilled him to the bone. He was deeply regretful for his inability to aid her. Nonetheless, he expressed relief at her safe return and inquired about her ability to heal the others. Marcel responded that their wounds were not overly complex. She believed that by rejoining the severed edges, she could likely heal them. As her gaze fell upon Laios, she pondered if he had foreseen the potential dangers, hence his insistence on her wearing the gorget. While acknowledging that the protective item had been pivotal to her survival, she questioned the soundness of Laios's overall strategy, considering it risky to place the entire burden of the confrontation upon her. Overcome with emotion, Marcel leaned against Laios's lifeless form, tearfully questioning if he had ever contemplated the harrowing possibility of being encircled by the corpses of their comrades. As she endeavored to heal each fallen member, the lion addressed her, revealing that he had perceived her deepest fears manifest in her nightmares, leaving her astonished. The lion solemnly promised that upon the restoration of his lower half, he would extend every effort to support her, recognizing her wish to never face such a grim scenario again. His pledge moved Marcel to tears once more. Seeking confirmation, she inquired about the lion's sincerity and the feasibility of his promise. Marcel confessed her desire to abolish the disparities in lifespans among different races, be they tall men, dwarves, or elves. She aspired for all to experience life at the same rhythm, as the vast discrepancies in longevity she saw as a root of profound misfortune, fostering an intangible divide that precluded equality. It was her vision to dismantle this divide, dreaming of a world where all beings could coexist in unity. The thought that the lion might have the power to realize such a transformative wish was beyond her belief. The winged lion gazed earnestly at Marcel and imparted that such a profound wish couldn't be realized by a mere fleeting desire. Nonetheless, he acknowledged that her venture into the dungeon was underpinned by a firm resolve to see her wish to fruition. Mid-sentence, reflecting on the bleakness that would follow the end of their adventure, she was interrupted as the others began to stir back to life. Laios expressed his disgust at the bloodied state he awoke to, realizing he had been deceased for some time. As he was about to express his gratitude to Marcel, he recoiled at the sight of several dungeon rabbits close behind her. The group was intrigued by her apparent control over the rabbits. She clarified that she hadn't tamed them. Instead, she was using a spell that compelled them to mimic her actions. Laios, delighted by the prospect, playfully requested to see the rabbits dance, unaware of Marcel's recent turmoil. Marcel, angered, confronted him about the gravity of what she had endured. She revealed the depth of her sorrow, having been the sole survivor amidst the corpses of her companions, an ordeal that left her in tears. The group was taken aback as they realized her fear of being abandoned and alone. Laios offered his apologies, recognizing the depth of distress his levity had caused. Tearfully, Marcel implored Laios to spare her from such a harrowing ordeal ever again. Understanding her plea, Laios assured her that he would not subject her to such an experience again. Amid the gaze of a creature, elven soldiers who had landed confronted Tance and his group. Tance conveyed the decree of the island's governor. The dungeon was to be sealed, and no one was to be permitted entry without exceptions. He politely requested that they depart the area. Yet, the elves stood firm, asserting that their comrades remained within the dungeon, and they could not abandon them without ensuring their safety. An elf remarked on the notably stern expression of the gnome. With their path barred, they resolved to find an alternate route, opting for a secondary entrance, which incited further upheaval. The elven soldiers found themselves in a standoff with Tance, alongside Kabru and Siro's party. Amid the tumult, Rin inquired about Kabru's whereabouts, and Siro disclosed his location on the 6th level. The throng's jostling resulted in Siro and Rin tumbling into an opening. Below, the monster remained vigilant, observing Mizern and the elven soldiers. An elf utilized birds to survey the surroundings, irritated to see her counterparts leisurely dining while she labored. Her scouting yielded no substantial information. Sishis, glancing towards Kabru, noted the absence of Laios. Ada speculated that Laios might have employed a hidden conduit to traverse to another level, while Sishis mused that the dungeon seemed to favor him. Kabru pondered both the dungeon's nature and the alleged secret passage. Ada was determined to search for this passage immediately. As they ate, she acknowledged the ingenuity with which the passageway was concealed, recognizing that uncovering it would be a challenging endeavor. Flecky hoped that they would discover the passage before their portable food supplies were depleted. Kabru then posed a question about the potential consequences if Laios succeeded in breaking the seal on the demon. Sishis and Pathel exchanged glances, with Sishis speculating that the demon would likely instruct Laios to eliminate the dungeon's current ruler. Despite Pathel's attempt to interject, Sishis continued, mentioning that the captain had disclosed everything to Kabru. She further elaborated that upon dispatching the mad sorcerer, Laios would assume control of the dungeon. Sishis pointed out that a demon could fulfill any wish, be it eternal life, indulgence in excesses, or unimaginable wealth. However, she recalled that Laios's desires lay elsewhere, as he harbored no interest in such offerings. His true passion was for monsters. The specifics of what Laios, a monster aficionado, might wish for remained uncertain to Sishis, who speculated it could range from seeking companionship with monsters to possibly creating the ultimate monster. Flecky ventured a guess that Laios might aim to forge the world's mightiest monster, or perhaps transform humans into monsters. Rishin suggested an even more personal transformation for Laios, becoming a monster himself. Flecky chuckled at the notion, dismissing it as an absurd fantasy. Nonetheless, they all recognized that Laios's potential ascension as the dungeon master, fueled by such whims, would undoubtedly complicate their mission, playing into the demon's hands. Kabru, reflecting on Laios's character, half-joked that he might indeed aspire to realize all the mentioned possibilities. Flexi elaborated on how the demon would incite Laios with ever-evolving desires, eventually convincing him to ascend to the surface. There, it would unleash mana and monsters across the land, attempting to conquer the realm above. Mid-conversation, she abruptly shifted the topic to inquire about the events in Utaya. Upon learning that Ataya's crisis was averted at the last moment, Flecky acknowledged the unpredictability surrounding the future of this dungeon, citing the absence of historical precedents for such a scenario. She grimly surmised that this could lead to their demise, pondering aloud the gravity of their situation and questioning their chances of survival. Rishon scanned the area for their captain, and Kabru mentioned he had just seen him. Looking upwards, Kabru spotted Captain Mizern in a precarious position. The elves cautioned Mizern about the peril, yet he alerted them to the demon's proximity. Utilizing a teleportation spell, Mizern returned to ground level. The elves implored Kabru to dissuade Mizern from recklessly teleporting. Mizern, however, directed their attention to a wall, indicating that their quarry lay just beyond. He requested Ada to facilitate access, though Ada remarked on the simplicity with which Mizern framed the task. She then advised everyone to maintain distance as she focused intently, preparing to breach the barrier. As Ada successfully breached the wall, the ground beneath them trembled. Distracted by Captain Mizern's close presence, Ada remarked on the difficulty of maintaining her focus under his watchful eye. Kabru suggested that she continue her work while they sought sustenance, though Mizern remained mute. Persuading Mizern that battling a demon requires nourishment, Kabru managed to coax him into eating. The elf present lauded Kabru's adeptness in handling the captain. Meanwhile, unnoticed by them, a monster observed Laios and his companions who were engrossed in their culinary preparations. They busied themselves with vegetables and rabbit meat, with Marcel announcing the completion of the first batch of rice. Senshi praised her efforts, highlighting the need for additional supplies. Chilchuk, having finished with the potatoes and carrots, inquired about the next step, to which Senshi recommended sautéing onions until they attained a golden hue. Upon asking Laios about the status of the onions, Laios, amidst tears, confirmed he had finished chopping. Senshi commended his work and advised careful cooking to avoid burning. They proceeded to melt butter in the pan, followed by the sautéing of onions, emphasizing the addition of salt to expedite the release of moisture. They patiently cooked the onions until they turned golden brown, marking the completion of this step. Senshi then seasoned the onions further, diligently stirring the mixture. Izutsumi undertook the task of processing the rabbit, starting by opening its abdomen to remove the entrails, followed by detaching the limbs and head, and then carefully skinning it. She likened the skinning process to undressing, a comparison she shared with Marcel. Senshi instructed that the next step involved deboning the meat, to which Izutsumi observed the noticeably reduced quantity of meat. Senshi estimated that meat from approximately 20 rabbits would suffice for their needs. They proceeded to combine the rabbit meat with the sautéed onions, stirring until the meat was fully cooked, at which point they added water and allowed the mixture to simmer. As the mixture simmered, Izutsumi and Marcel prepared plates with cooked rice, over which Laios and Senshi ladled the roux. The final dish, dubbed head-chopping rabbit curry, amazed everyone with its inviting appearance and aroma. Senshi remarked on how the spice-induced fragrance was particularly appetizing. Laios, impressed by the dish's visual and appeal, noted the practicality of a liquid roux for expedited consumption, suggesting its carbohydrate content would be comforting and possibly soporific. Curious about the spices contributing to the curry's distinctive scent, Laios questioned Senshi, who revealed that the recipe included a diverse blend of ingredients, enhancing the curry's exotic aroma. The array of spices Senshi utilized included those gifted by orcs from their village, a selection from Maizuru, seasonings obtained from the Golden Village, along with various spices discovered within Thistle's residence. These were complemented by ingredients they had gathered throughout their dungeon expedition. Senshi also mentioned transforming the grains they found into rice using changelings. This disclosure moved Laios to tears as he reminisced about the myriad beings they had encountered on their quest. Fueled by a collective resolve, they planned to confront Farlin, armed with the culinary might of their combined efforts, confident in the strength of their food. As they prepared to transport the large serving of curry, the monster observed their movements closely. Unbeknownst to them, Thistle was monitoring the dungeon's events through the monster's gaze. Upon witnessing their actions, Thistle, puzzled by the unfolding scenario, pondered the nature of their endeavor. In the dungeon's 6th level, Mizurn and his allies were wreaking havoc, while on the 1st level, the elven soldiers found themselves in disputes with other intruders. These interlopers had managed to liberate the winged lion, which was now altering the dungeon's layout and obstructing Thistle's plans. Contemplating his priorities, Thistle deemed the teleporting individual the most formidable threat, recognizing the imperative to prevent him from nearing his abode. He recalled Mizurn's revelation that Durgal had ascended to the surface, ultimately disintegrating, thereby nullifying the need to defend the castle. According to Mizurn, the king had ultimately sought his demise, a notion Thistle dismissed as fabrication. Convinced of his duty to safeguard Durgal's legacy, Thistle became so agitated that he wounded his scalp. In the midst of his turmoil, Thistle felt a calming presence as Farlin tended to his injuries and offered him fruit, inquiring if they were berries. Farlin shared the berries among them, yet Thistle, preoccupied with his swirling thoughts and oblivious to Farlin's intentions, consumed the entirety of the offering. Farlin, taken aback by Thistle's voraciousness, found herself bereft of any fruit. Meanwhile, Thistle's mind was awash with reflections and concerns. Determined, Thistle resolved to make his way back to his residence, intent on securing the winged lion once more. Deeming it essential for the realm's safety, he was adamant about thwarting any attempt at its liberation. In the process, he planned to eliminate any trespassers within his domain. Specifically, he intended to lay a trap for the teleporting adversary, confident in his superiority within the dungeon's depths. Regarding those causing disturbances on the 1st level, Thistle decided to deploy monsters as a means to overpower them decisively. In a moment of action, he destroyed the web, resulting in both him and the dragon descending. He then issued a command to the dragon, directing their immediate course towards his home, preparing for the confrontations that lay ahead. A flashback revealed Durgal's childhood, with Thistle playing a nurturing role. Thistle reprimanded Durgal for being fussy with his meals, humorously cautioning that he wouldn't develop into a robust individual without a proper diet. As a teenager, Durgal was caught pilfering sausages from the kitchen, recalling Thistle's advice about the necessity of eating well to grow strong. However, Thistle remarked on the futility of physical growth absent of personal development. Durgal, awestruck by Thistle's magical prowess, suggested that Thistle should assume the role of the court sorcerer. The narrative then fast-forwards to Durgal grappling with the reality of his impending nuptials, followed by his sorrow over his father's demise. Durgal confessed his fear of death, to which Thistle provided comfort and reassurance, pledging his protection and envisaging a future where they would remain united indefinitely. Upon sighting the winged lion, Thistle briefly pondered their eternal bond, dismissing the thought as inconsequential. Their descent continued until they abruptly collided with the ground. Upon arriving at the mad sorcerer's abode, Thistle acknowledged that the decisive moment had arrived. He informed Farlin of his intent to confront the situation directly, advising her to remain behind and await the outcome. In a journey back through time, it's revealed that the Thornton siblings, even in their youth, frequently engaged in discussions about monsters. Laios, captivated by their allure, expressed how fascinating he found them, a sentiment his sister echoed, noting the variety among them. Curious, Laios inquired about what kind of monster she would like to transform into. Her response questioned the premise of desiring such a transformation, to which he enthusiastically argued that monsters' strength and coolness were appealing traits. He illustrated that, as a monster, she could effortlessly overcome any adversaries and even escape their village if she possessed the ability to fly. Laios then shared a drawing depicting the most formidable monster imaginable, revealing his dream of assuming such a form to explore the world and encounter various monsters. Farlin, inspired by the notion, expressed her wish to embark on the same adventure, though Laios teased her about being original. However, Farlin's insistence on accompanying her brother led Laios to promise that, should he transform into a monster, he would carry her on his back. Farlan's delight was evident as she contemplated including her pets in this fantastical journey. As she enthusiastically expanded the list of animals to bring along, their imaginative play culminated in a playful tumble. Returning to the present, Laios expressed regret for having abandoned his sister, who eventually transformed into a monster, leaving their village behind. Marcel, visibly drained, marveled at their actual arrival. Laios made a singular plea for non-intervention, vowing to confront Farlan himself. Outside, Thistle ordered the dragon to remain in place. Adhering to this directive, the dragon waited with patience, fixating on the door. However, curiosity soon took hold, prompting her to glance through the windows. A particular plant captured her attention, leading her to examine and ultimately harvest it. Engrossed in the fragrance and extracting its nectar, her attention was diverted by an enticing scent. Intrigued, she traced the aroma to its source, discovering the curry prepared earlier. Overwhelmed by its appearance and smell, she took a moment to admire the dish before the urge to taste it became irresistible. Poised with the spoon in hand, she hesitated, recalling Thistle's explicit instructions to await his return. Despite her initial hesitation, she indulged in the meal and was astounded by its deliciousness, particularly enjoying the rabbit meat. Hungry as she was, she consumed bite after bite without pause. Her curiosity was piqued by a barrel marked, "Drink me," leading her to pour its contents into a mug. Discovering it was an alcoholic beverage, she took a tentative sip before consuming the entire mug in one go, which intensified her hunger. She proceeded to savor the rice and curry with renewed zeal, complementing her feast with generous swigs of alcohol until the plate was empty. The meal left her thoroughly contented. After the satisfying feast, she rose to return to her post, but the substantial alcohol intake impaired her balance, causing her to sway. Evidently intoxicated, she found herself unable to resist the urge to sleep. From their hidden vantage point behind a bush, Laios and his companions quietly observed the scene unfold. Farlan had indeed succumbed to sleep. Marcel inquired whether Laios was prepared to confront her on his own. Confidently affirming his resolve, Laios approached Farlan, mindful of the potential danger should she awaken and become aggressive. Understanding his disadvantage in physical combat, he contemplated ensuring a swift end by targeting her vital organs. Recalling Kabru's previous engagement with Farlan, where a critical hit failed to be delivered, Laios realized the necessity of aiming for the dragon's heart or lungs, acknowledging the challenge posed by her formidable stature. He then considered the spinal cord as a potential target, recognizing it as an evident weak point that could immobilize her. However, breaking a dragon's spine would likely require Marcel's magical assistance, an option Laios hesitated to employ, especially given the risk of irreversibly harming Farlan. Furthermore, he acknowledged Farlan's magical capabilities, which could pose a threat even if she were physically incapacitated. Laios's thoughts turned to the possibility of targeting her brain, theorizing that a simple tool might suffice if her brain's location was typical. Yet, he recognized the complexity of chimera-type monsters, which often possess multiple brains, making this strategy unreliable. Thus, he contemplated suffocation as an alternative, deducing from Farlan's eating behavior that she likely had a singular respiratory opening. He speculated that her large upper body suggested a significant airway, which, if obstructed, could lead to asphyxiation. Cautiously ascending the dragon's tail, Laios observed Farlan in a state of profound slumber, pondering his next move. Gazing at his sister, Laios realized he had never possessed the resolve to decisively act. Throughout his life, he had evaded confrontations and decisions, but witnessing his sister's consumption by the red dragon marked the first instance he openly embraced his true self. It was then he acknowledged the inevitability of losing friends and the grim necessity of taking lives to preserve others. As he gently caressed his sister's head, she stirred awake. Recognizing the moment's gravity, he quickly used a cloth to envelop her head, and with formidable determination, he began to suffocate her. Farlin resisted fiercely. From a distance, the sight compelled Marcel to shield her eyes. The struggle intensified as Farlin fought back, managing to injure Laios and propel him against the wall. Despite the violence of her retaliation, Laios maintained his grip on the cloth. Marcel, unable to watch, missed the moment Farlin's resistance waned and her colossal form collapsed. Hearing Laios' name called out, Marcel dared to look again, finding the group converging on the scene. Chilchuk, concerned for Laios, assured him it was safe to release his hold. Laios, observing Farlin's motionless state, expressed regret for the time taken and vowed to restore her to her former self. As she attempted to rise, the resolve in her struggle was evident. Marcel offered her aid to Laios, urging him to remain still for her to administer healing. Expressing his gratitude, Laios remained patient as Marcel worked her magic. Their attention then shifted to Farlin, with Marcel reassuring Laios that there was no cause for alarm, as Farlin's soul was still within her body, likening her state to being merely unconscious. Laios harbored doubts, yet he confided in Marcel that he had finally mustered the courage needed. Puzzled by his statement, Marcel inquired further, prompting Laios to explain his readiness to both endure loss and impose it. With this newfound resolve, he rallied the group to proceed, signaling that the time had come to confront the mad sorcerer in their ultimate battle.